Imagine waking up over 3,000 years ago. The sun is rising over a wide, slow river. The air already smells of warm mud and baking bread. You're not a pharaoh, you're not a queen, you're just an ordinary person, and today, like most days, your whole life is going to revolve around one thing, the river. Welcome to a single ordinary day in ancient Egypt. This is the story of how millions of people actually lived along the Nile, not the kings in the paintings, but the bakers, the farmers, the kids, how we got here. Here's the thing people forget about Egypt. We remember the pyramids and the gold, but ordinary Egyptian life wasn't built on gold, it was built on mud. Dark, rich, beautiful mud. Every year, like clockwork, the Nile River would flood. It would spill out over the land and leave behind a thin blanket of dark soil so rich that almost anything you planted in it would grow. The Egyptians had a name for their country, Kemet. It means the black land, named for that life-giving mud. So everything, the food, the cities, the calendar, even the gods, grew out of that yearly flood. Miss the flood, and people went hungry. Get a good flood, and the whole land thrived. Their entire world ran on the river's rhythm. So let's follow one ordinary day through it. Your house isn't made of stone. Stone was for temples and tombs. Homes were made of mud bricks, shaped in wooden molds and dried hard in the sun. They kept the brutal midday heat out and stayed surprisingly cool inside. You'd wake early while it was still cool. Breakfast was simple and the same for almost everyone, bread and beer. And before you laugh, Egyptian beer wasn't really about getting tipsy. It was thick, a little sweet, almost like a soupy bread drink, and it was food, safe to drink, full of energy. Workers were sometimes even paid in bread and beer. It was money you could eat. Then out to work. If you were a farmer, and most people were, your day belonged to the fields. You'd plant wheat and barley for bread, and flax, a tall plant whose fibers were spun into linen. That light, cool linen is why almost everyone in those paintings is wearing simple white. It was perfect for the heat. And watering it all, the Egyptians invented a clever little machine called a shaduf, a long pole balanced like a seesaw with a bucket on one end and a weight on the other. Dip the bucket in the river, swing the pole, and the weight lifts the water up to your field. One person could water a whole crop. 3,000 years later, farmers in some places still use it. That's a good idea that simply never needed improving. Now all this farming, all this trading, somebody had to keep track of it. And this is where Egypt did something extraordinary. They wrote it down. They made paper, not the paper you know. They took a reed that grew thick along the riverbanks, called papyrus, sliced it, pressed it, and dried it into smooth sheets. Our word paper comes straight from papyrus. And the people who could write, scribes, learning to write was hard, hundreds and hundreds of little picture symbols we now call hieroglyphs. But if you became a scribe, you didn't have to haul water or harvest in the sun. You worked in the shade. Egyptian kids who went to scribe school were literally told, be a scribe, it saves you from labor. Some things about school never change. When the work was done, life looked more familiar than you'd think. Families played board games. One called Senet was so loved it was buried with people to play in the afterlife. Children had toys, little carved animals, balls, spinning tops. People wore makeup, dark eyeliner called kohl, partly to look good, and partly because it cut the sun's glare and helped protect their eyes. And here's something that surprises people. In ancient Egypt, women could own land. They could run businesses, sign contracts, go to court. For the ancient world, that was remarkably fair, far ahead of many places that came long after. As the sun sank back toward the river, the day wound down the way it began, with bread, with family, with the Nile sliding past in the dark. And above it all, the same belief tied everything together, that the world ran on balance, on Ma'at harmony, and that keeping life in order, fair and steady, was its own kind of sacred work. So here's the amazing part. We remember Egypt for the giant stuff, the pyramids, the pharaohs, the gold masks, but none of that is why Egypt lasted for 3,000 years. It lasted because of the ordinary day, the mud bricks, the bread and beer, the shaduf swinging by the river, the scribe in the shade, a million ordinary people doing ordinary things in rhythm with one extraordinary river. That's how ancient Egypt actually worked. Not magic, not just kings. A whole civilization quietly growing out of the black land the river left behind. It makes you wonder what someone 3,000 years from now would think was ordinary about our day. If you ever wondered how we got here, you're in the right place. See you in the next one.